All right, here we are at another episode of Flipping Houses for Rookies. Although after 392 shows, Peter, I was beginning to think that I think we've gone a little bit further than flipping houses, huh? We used to get things about that. Well, you're creative real estate. How are you flipping houses? Well, because we're flipping creative real estate houses. I've been thinking about maybe getting a new name for the podcast. Anyways, how are you this morning, Peter?
Doing okay. How about you?
I think I'm okay. All right, here we are at episode number 393. And here is the title of today's episode. You've done the deal structure math with your creative real estate seller. Now what?
He says yes, and you buy the house. You did the math.
What most people think.
You did the math. You proved it to the guy. The guy goes, "Oh, thank you very much. Where do I sign? Where do I collect my check?" Life is beautiful.
Here is the description to handle all of that.
Then you wake up. Then you wake up. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
You crunch the numbers. Have an idea how to talk to the seller with the math. But then what? What about the seller's emotional desires? How do you handle all of that? In this episode, we are going to reveal some advanced strategies that will help you double or triple the amount of real estate sellers saying yes to your offers. And the secret is, it is beyond the numbers and it is not negotiating. Even the most novice rookie can do this and make deals quickly. In fact, when it is done correctly, you will unleash the creative beast in your seller so it takes all the fear away from these calls for you. By using this emotional formula, you will soon want to make calls just to see how the seller will respond to you and your offers. Buckle up, because you've never heard of this in real estate ever before. Learn to decode your seller's emotional desires, and you will soon start transforming your lifestyle to be the way you desire and wish for. Listen now and begin to leave your competition speechless while you become a legend. Ta-da. Okay,
I like both of those words, speechless and legend. Those are pretty good.
Okay.
Those are pretty good.
All right, a little bit of housekeeping. First of all, there is a link in the description of wherever you found this video or podcast. And if you click on that link, there's always something there for you pertaining to the podcast. It actually enhances what we're talking about on the podcast. So sometimes I'm giving stuff away. Sometimes it's a discount on what we sell. Sometimes it's not. It's just always related to the podcast. So whatever we're talking about is usually the manual aspect of the concept. And the link is something that's automated to do that quicker, much quicker. Also, we make sure you subscribe to us and you like us or dislike us if you feel that way. Leave a comment wherever you're watching us or listening to us. If you have questions, we live stream the podcast every Thursday morning, 9:30ish a.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you go to Facebook, YouTube, or LinkedIn, you will find the video being streamed. And wherever you can type comments or whatever in those chats, you can send us a comment and we will get it on the screen and you could participate in the podcast. Please make sure that you only ask us questions pertaining to the podcast because we only have a certain amount of time here and I don't want to get distracted with other things. If you have other questions, you can do one of two things. You can either go to WhatsApp Messenger and join our Let's Talk Real Estate group, which is 100 and something people. It's like a mastermind group for creative real estate investors. or you can go to flippinghousesforrookies.com. Top right-hand side is a support ticket link, and you can send us a support ticket. Okay? So, I don't know how to say his name, so I'll leave that to you, Peter. It says, nice meeting you guys. It's nice meeting you, too.
Let's try Ibrahim.
Ibrahim. Thank you.
That's what I'm trying.
Okay, cool. Well, thank you for being here. All right, so here we go. Let's get down to some meat and potatoes. Okay, Pete, I think even you will enjoy our conversation today.
Well, wait, what are you saying? I don't enjoy our conversations otherwise?
It's going to be something new for you is what I'm saying, because I've never even taught this to you. Only because I don't think you've even heard this before. And actually, it took me a bit to kind of write this thing, because this is one of those podcasts where I got the idea. I broke all the rules, like the headline. I have headline tools and stuff like that to make sure it's very emotional in it, and it didn't meet any of those expectations.
Huh.
So I'm completely doing this just on a whim, because I think it's what people will need and want once they hear what I'm going to talk about. And so I had to kind of like, I would write it, and then it wasn't right, and then I would write it again, and it wasn't right, and I kind of, it's new to, I mean, it's something that I do, but I've never articulated it before, so I had to kind of pull it out of the cobwebs. So, and also, it sounds a bit simplistic, you know, kind of really easy, but it's not exactly simple. But after today, I hope you and all of the rookies will try it. Okay?
Certainly.
So first, I want to mention this is not an accident that this podcast is in the sequence. In other words, number 393. Because what we've been doing since podcast number 385 to 392 was all about deal structuring. So we kind of covered a whole bunch, and it wasn't like the normal, this is a slot deal, this is a subject to deal. I didn't do any of that. What I did is I actually pulled filing cabinets. Pulled deals from the filing cabinets, and we actually went over scenarios, and we converted the scenario into a deal structure based on the information that the seller gave us and their situation, and we took those situations and turned them into the math process and how we could actually make deals with them mathematically, right? So that means that if you go from podcast number 385 to 392, that's 7 hours of deep diving into the math and deal structuring for you for free. Now, I know that anybody in my position would easily put that behind a gateway, you know, a login information, and they'd be charging you for that. So here, it's up to you. Unfortunately, because it's free, most will discredit it and not believe that it's valuable and won't go look at it, and they lose, because it is absolutely worth. I mean, I could easily put it into a gateway and charge $1,000 for it, because, or more, or $2,000 for it, because I know people that do that, and so do you.
Sure.
You know, meaning the listener. They're the standard guys that sell information. All right, so I thought we could pull back a bit from the deal structuring and hit the other side of the equation, right? The seller's emotional desires. So in case you missed the past podcast where we talk about this, if you don't know the formula, it's this, and we talked about this. In fact, you had a tremendous input in part of this, because you helped me. I had already had it, but you helped me refine it. So the formula is this: the correct math that indicates to the seller, plus the seller's emotional desires, equals a deal. And don't think it's anything more than that or anything less than that. This is the simplicity that I'm trying to tell you. It's very simplistic, but it's not simple. And here's the reason why it's not simple. It's because the listener right now, the rookie, won't believe me and will dub in or mock up or add in or infuse their personal opinions based on how they would want to be spoken to, based on their financial situation and how they would accept the deal.
Mm.
and not taking consideration the seller's ideas, the seller's thoughts, and the seller's emotions. And not to pick on you, I'm not doing this because I really don't want to do that. But you were just in the middle of, which we didn't do. You were just in the middle of trying to do a slot deal with a $3 million house,
Mm.
and you and I had to go through that in a few private sessions, right? Because
Yeah.
you don't have a $3 million house. You don't even know what it's like to own a $3 million house, and you had all these considerations and concerns and worries and what about
Mm.
this and what about that, because that reality wasn't yours.
Very, very completely unfamiliar.
Yes.
Never even been in a $3 million house. So yeah, it's just lack of familiarity. Yeah.
So
So
my
lots of
point is
questions.
this is yeah, this is simplistic, but simple is not simple to do, because the right formula is the correct math plus the seller's emotional desires equals a deal. If
Yeah.
you infuse your ideas or your thoughts about the $3 million house, it crushes the deal,
Hmm.
because you don't do that. You're not keeping extroverted from it enough. You're too
Yeah.
introverted on the deal.
Yeah. Well, going into it, you don't have familiarity with what somebody might be like on that. So you have just your own thoughts. But I guess your point's going to be how to talk to them to find out, because you don't really know.
Right.
And I mean, one of the famous things that people tell us is when you explain how to do a deal, and oh, they'll do this, they'll do that, and they'll take this, they won't take that much money. It's people go, well, I wouldn't do that, right?
Right.
I
Right.
wouldn't do
Especially
that.
subject to. I hear that a lot in subject to training.
Yeah,
I
I'm never
wouldn't
going
give
to do
my
that.
house. I wouldn't deed my house and let somebody keep the mortgage in my name. Well, you're right. That's why 97% of the people that are selling houses won't do that. But you only
Hmm.
need one, and 3% is more than one.
Hmm.
Right.
Yeah,
All
we've
right, Pete.
done
So
it.
here's
We've done it.
here's
I've
how I
seen
want to
it.
start. Here's how I
Yeah.
want to start.
Yep.
I want to unfairly ask you a question. So
Okay.
if you were to think of the emotions or the emotional desires, most of the emotions of sellers, how many do you think there would be,
Well, how many emotions?
or emotional desires?
Oh, well, emotional desire. So yeah, and I think what you and I are trying to mean when we put those kind of words together is people have desires, and I'm doing this for myself to see how am I going to answer you. People have desires, but there's emotion involved. It's not like $300,000. No, there's $300 because of something and how and why. So how many emotional
So you're
desires?
saying that the 300,000 isn't the mathematical; it's the 300,000 because of what they want and need, or feel like they should get.
Well, it's on top of just the plain numbers, because
Right.
somebody's not going to give him $1 million just because he asked for it. So
Right.
the numbers are somewhere in the ballpark of the numbers, but because of what he wants or what he doesn't want or what he's worried about, that could change, or the willingness to do it can certainly change. Like, yes, I'll give you my deed and you can take over the mortgage, all that stuff. So how many emotional desires are there? Well, it's either going to be like 10 to 20 or just two.
Okay, so let me ask you this question. When
Yeah.
you think of talking to a seller and you think of, okay, I have the math sorted out. It's taken me, a couple years to figure this deal structuring out, and I think I've got it.
Hmm.
Because that's a lot of our rookies. They study and study and study. They feel like they got to have all the answers in the first 5 minutes of phone call.
Mm.
Because if they don't, they're not going to get a deal, which is so dead wrong. Actually, it's the opposite of that, but most rookies don't know that. But more to the point, when you're talking to somebody, how many things do you think the seller could say emotionally that you feel like you need to understand and learn? Like, do you need to understand, like, their personalities? Like, are they an angry person or a happy person, or a
Uh,
miserable person, or a person that's just covert and just tries to trick you all the time? Um, are you trying to figure out, like, with their situation, Like, what are you trying to figure out? What are they feeling? Like, is this difficult for you? Do
Yeah.
you feel like it's this big mass of like, oh my God, I'm never going to learn that because there's too many of them?
No, actually, no. I think it's more like what they're trying to do or not do. Um, like why you're selling the house. What, it's not that complicated if you ask them, and if you let them feel like they can tell you, like you're not some kind of a jerk where the guy doesn't want to answer you or let you into his information. Just be a normal person. How many times do people tell you things just in a conversation? You're
Yep.
getting divorced? What? They'll tell
Yep.
you stuff if you listen. So I don't think it's that hard. I think we forget to bother to do it. We get stuck on the numbers and then we start throwing the offer here without just listening a little longer and
Which is
asking a few more
exactly what I
questions.
want to talk about today. So
Aha.
you've been with me too long because you said it's either 10 or 12 or whatever you said, or it's two. And that's
Two.
because you know me.
Yeah. Well, no, it's beside that. Most answers are pretty simple. It's like, like
Yeah.
a computer. How complicated is a computer? 0 or 1. Every answer goes to the left or the right, period. You can't think more than that. Yes or no. Yeah, left or right. So that's my two guesses because of
So there's five.
aha. Okay.
And once you become very familiar with these five, your confidence soars and your deals start happening.
Mm-hmm.
But just to take 2 minutes to understand this, okay, or at least understand me.
Mm-hmm.
I read a lot, right? So I kind of stumbled across something and it triggered something for me, right? And here's what triggered. So I thought to myself, emotional desires.
Mm-hmm.
What are they? So let me be frank, okay? So I'm just going to be talking to you like it's just me and you talking, okay?
Sure.
So on the coaching call, the last 2 Mondays in a row, I signed up for Russell Bronson's, what is it, secrets of whatever, secrets of success. Which, by the way, if you have not found that or seen that, I think it's $97 a month. I could be wrong. Um, I, I I thought it was $297, but I don't think it's that much money. I think that's an upsell, but $97 a month. This man has done the miraculous. He has. Uh, I don't normally brag about somebody like that, but it's amazing what he has done in this portal. The books and the unusual things, the books that have been written that were never published by authors, and he's got like a dozen authors in there. One of which is Napoleon Hill. So we were last two Monday nights. I played uh, black and white films that I think were from the 40s and 50s of
Mm-hmm.
actually Napoleon Hill actually speaking to us.
And for anybody who might not know, Napoleon Hill is the author of the fairly incredibly famous book "Think and Grow Rich"
That's right.
from
Anyways,
1937.
his yeah, 1937. I think it was he started his research in 1919, I think it was. But anyways, let's not get into that. Anyways, you can get this if you. I think it's Success Secrets is what it's called. Russell Brunson. Russell Brunson is ClickFunnels, the guy from ClickFunnels. Okay, it's his second business. ClickFunnels has hit his peak, so he's starting another business. Anyways, so Napoleon Hill says, if you can conceive and believe, you can achieve. Right?
Yep.
Isn't that what he says?
Yeah.
You're saying it right?
Yeah.
So I started to think about this conceive part, like
Mm.
what you can conceive. Conceive means what you can. Well, let's look it up because I don't want to. I don't want to spend too much time on this.
Mm-hmm.
So conceive means to me what you can absorb or what you can think of, kind of like your imagination a bit,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like what you can think of or dream of or whatever.
Conjure up.
Conjure up. Here you go. Get my internet to work here. I don't know why my internet is so slow this morning. So I started to wonder about this, like with our sellers.
Hmm.
Like, where do they get their ideas from?
Hmm.
Right? Is this making
Yeah.
sense?
Oh, yeah. Well, you're talking to somebody, but they didn't just put the house on the market, or, I mean, you might have called the house that's not for sale, but you want to see if the guy might consider. He's not just going to go, oh, sure, yeah. There's things going on in his head.
Right. So, so conceive means to form an idea, a plan, etc., in your mind. It's to imagine something.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so if you've never bought a $3 million house and you can't imagine what it's like to own a $3 million house, how can you conceive owning a $3 million house?
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
So that flipped the switch for me on this podcast.
Ah.
Because here's what I figured out. It's awareness level. That was the secret. Like awareness level.
Hmm.
Like you can't conceive selling a house in 4 days for $50,000 over its asking price unless you're aware of the market.
Hmm.
Now, I'm not saying that you can't do the impossible, and I'm not saying that you can't force it and push it and postulate it and all these things, you know what I mean? I'm not saying you can't do that, but the usual is what you need to know. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
So here's what I figured out, or here's what I think I figured out. This is new, so we're going to be testing this definitely in the coaching group, right?
Okay.
So the thing to know and the biggest secret is to know there's a perfect time to give a seller an offer.
That, you know what? That makes sense. Keep talking. Keep
Do
talking.
it too early, no deal. Do it too late, no deal.
Hmm.
All sellers follow a journey of awareness when selling a house or a piece of property.
Hmm.
So our job is to bring sellers through these 5 stages and give our offer at the exact correct time. And it takes all the crap away. There's no negotiating. There's no anything other than you hit them at the right exact time of their awareness. They were ready for it.
Hmm.
You know, this is disgusting, and I'm sorry. But my oldest daughter, Jessie, who did the podcast with us, I think 2 weeks ago, which, by the way, was really good. And I always, Pete, I got to tell you, 2 old guys don't do well on the internet. You put a pretty girl on there,
Bill,
she outranks us every time.
Bill, and just put her picture up when I'm talking. Just put her picture up.
She always whatever she comes around, she gets like double or 3 times the amount of views that we get.
So you got to get an AI that puts Jesse's picture up, her voice, and when I say stuff, it comes out like Jesse.
No, I'll keep doing what I'm doing. I'm good.
Wait,
So anyways,
think about it.
She's got 2 children and pregnant with her 3rd. So here's my point is that she'll potty train my grandson, who's going to be, I think, 6 next month, and my granddaughter, who is going to be, I think, 4 this month. And I noticed this because it's like she's trying and trying and trying, and then all of a sudden one day, I noticed this with my granddaughter. One day she just went in the bathroom and went to the bathroom. She sat on the toilet, went to the bathroom.
Yeah.
It was like it's this awareness thing. She got to a point where she's like, "I'm ready."
Yeah.
My students are the same way. What is that saying? The teacher will come to the students when they're ready, or something. What is that?
Yeah. When the student is ready, the master will appear.
Yeah. Right. When they could have been there the whole time.
Yeah.
Right in front of them.
Yeah. Well, I've heard talking to like certain salespeople that they never like asked for the money. They just
Yeah.
keep talking to the person about the car or whatever it is or the class they want to do until the person goes, "Yeah, I want to do that." Then you
Right.
go, "Okay." Then they go, "How much is it?" You tell them. But they kind of close themselves by being
Yep.
patient to just help them. But I've never heard a breakdown like you're talking about, like some sequence. So
Yep.
that makes me very interested.
Okay, so let me show you what I mean by first revealing the 5 steps. I'm gonna name them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then
Hmm.
we'll deep dive into each one and how they pertain to real estate.
Cool.
Okay.
Yeah.
Number one, they're unaware.
Okay.
Number two, they're problem aware.
Hmm.
Number three, they're solution aware. Number four, they're result aware. And number five, they're most aware. Now, these sound complicated, but let me break them down. And as soon as we get done, which we're going to do for the next 30 minutes, we're going to break these down. And when we get done, you're going to be like, son of a gun. I promise.
Okay.
Okay. Now, pay attention as I explain each of these, and you'll soon start to understand why you don't give your offer in the wrong awareness.
Okay. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
number one, unaware. Here, your seller has no knowledge of what it takes to sell a house, the cost to sell, or the procedure.
Okay.
This is where most realtors get hired.
Mm.
So, I don't know how I can explain this correctly, but it's like this: blame. You ever hear about the word blame?
Oh, sure.
BLAME. So,
Oh,
so what do
yeah.
you know about blame? What are you?
Well, when I think of blame, it's you have something going on, but instead of you saying, geez, I should fix that, you go, I'll just say it's the other person's fault. They're responsible, not me. So you throw everything at somebody else, but it doesn't work because it doesn't account for your part of the scenario.
This is the realtor system. What you
Yeah.
just explained is exactly the person. The seller is unaware. They don't want to deal with it. They don't want to be. They don't want to be involved in the process.
Hmm.
They just want to put it over there. It's an over there-ness,
Yep.
and hope somebody else will do it for them and bring them their check.
Which is always smaller than they expect because they're unaware of all
Right.
the things that happen.
Right. So we talk about this. I should have looked this up. We talk about this in the real estate monopoly, right? I forgot
Yeah.
what episode that
The
is.
mafia,
Real
not
estate mafia. Yeah.
97.
Yeah, but we did it again after that
Oh,
too.
yeah.
Anyways, if you go to Flipping Houses for Rookies // podcast, you can type in the search engine real estate monopoly. And we talk about this because we talk about how all the professionals get their fees. You know, that would be the realtor, you know,
There's a lawyer.
yeah, including the realtors, including the real estate broker who has the license, but you have the money guy, the inspector, the insurance guy, the lawyer, the closing
Title
agent.
search.
They all get their fees, right? But see, the funny thing is who's in charge of the deal. So you think all these professionals have your deal on their desk and they're trying to get their fee, and that you're on the top of the pile because you're going to pay them when they close.
Mhm.
When little do you know, they have like 30 other deals just like yours, and they just kind of like they're not at cause, they're at effect all the time, and they run their businesses based on the screaming memes or the squeaky wheel gets the oil, you know what I mean, type of thing,
Yeah.
right? So the point is that only you or only the seller interested in the deal and pushing it along, the seller's intention and attention will get the deal done, right?
Hmm.
So unaware. Also, this is where the seller thinks their house is special. and others are not like it,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
or they have no concept of what the buyer needs to do to fulfill the seller's obscure wishes. What does that mean to you, obscure wishes?
Well, the seller's going to have certain expectations of what's going to happen, but the buyer doesn't care at all about what the buyer wants. He just wants the house, when he wants it, how he wants it, any details. I don't even know if the buyer knows any of that.
I'm going to completely come off from left field on this and change the topic for a second.
Oh.
I've been a marketer for probably 30 years, maybe longer, because I've been self-employed for 40 years. I owned a gas station for 27 years. I started my first month pumping 500 gallons a month. By the time I stopped running that gas station, we were pumping like 140,000 gallons a month or 130,000 gallons a month. We were the leading gas station in that area. Now nowadays they pump way more gas than that, but this is 20 years ago or 15 years ago. I started my marketing career then because I would stand in my gas station and wonder why 13,000 cars were going by my gas station and not pulling in trying to get gas. That started my marketing career. I tell you this because I have spent countless hours, countless months and years, countless seminars, courses, and countless amount of money trying to figure this out. And I will tell you that I still don't have it all figured out. Okay? But I definitely have gotten a lot of knowledge.
Yep.
My point in telling you this is that I have to gauge who to listen to and who not to listen to, because I've had some crazy ideas. And I've had people tell me there's no way that would work, which, by the way, one of my gauges is the more people that tell me it's not going to work is the way that I go, because Dan Kennedy taught me that the opposites work.
Yeah.
Okay, they're what rule.
Well,
Anyways,
if everybody was so smart, why aren't they all rich, right?
Right. So my point is this: the guy that's spending the money with you gets a vote on whether you're right or wrong. The guy that's not spending money with you, like for example, my wife or my children or my family, tell me I'm nuts for doing something, they don't get a vote because they're not going to buy my product.
Good.
Okay. So in this particular case, we need to pay attention to that. Like, who gets a vote on whether we're doing the right thing or not? And that vote is the seller that is going to do something with us. So stop trying to satisfy everyone and find out the successful actions that satisfy the deal the sellers do with you. In other words, the definition of success is doing more right things than wrong. So once you do one deal, you'll start keeping track of those successes, either mentally or, if you're clever, you'll write them down. Okay? So I'm telling you that because in the unaware section, that they're just unaware. Just realize you got to bring them up the line.
And you're not even talking about unaware of all of our possible creative real estate type of deals. They're not even aware of the normal things, how it goes. Cost to sell.
They just have an idea in their head that they're going to sell their house for this much money, and you'll be like, "What do you mean 230,000?" Zillow says it's worth 160.
Yeah.
Right? Or what do you mean you want all cash? I've had people, I don't want anybody going to the bank. I don't want to go through that process. Right? For sale by owners, we'll tell you things like, I don't want people tramping through my house.
Okay, good luck.
Right?
Yeah.
They are just oblivious to anything except what they want. And they're not paying attention to, the reason for my story earlier, they're not paying attention to the guy that's going to pay them what they need.
Right.
So what happens is they're oblivious to the fact that whoever is going to give them the money for the house has to qualify for a loan 99% of the time, or 99.9% of the time. They
Mm-hmm.
have to qualify for a loan, which means there has to be appraisals. They have to do inspection reports because the bank requires them. And there's a whole procedure on whether or not they can pay this dollar amount. Like during COVID, when the prices were elevated and people were paying too much money, it's because they would take $50,000 out of their bank account and they would put it for a down payment, but the bank was only lending what was the current appraisal of that property,
Mm.
which, mind you, was up higher than most appraisals before that.
Yeah.
But I know many realtors that had a little system on how they would nudge or try to convince the appraiser to bump it $10,000 or $5,000
Mm.
or $20,000.
Yeah.
And I know this because I know a couple of appraisers, and that's all they talked about was complained about how realtors wanted another. They were 20,000 over the appraisal they were comfortable with, and they wanted another 10 grand. Right.
Yeah.
So my point is that just because somebody was in that scenario, we'll say a younger person, like your sons, just because your son just bought a house and he paid $300,000 for a $250,000 house and it needs $20,000 worth of work that he didn't know about, doesn't make him plausible to be unaware. In that case, the market will just consider him as being uneducated, and shame on you, young man.
Mm.
That's not a good excuse to be unaware with your buyer, because your buyer will be like, that's too much money. Well, you should have paid less, or you should have got the seller before to pay the $20,000 worth of repairs. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, on the other side, you know how sometimes the seller will give us a house for a little bit less because he's got problems and
Right.
he's willing to give away. Well, this is a scenario after 2 years looking for a house. He like, damn it, if I don't overpay for this, I'll never get a house. So he did it consciously, and got it for less than some people were offering because it was too high for the bank to appraise. So he
Right.
kind of ballparked it and managed, but he'd never buy a house if he didn't overpay. So he
Right.
did it like knowing he was that or nothing. So he's in at least. Pain in
Yeah,
the ass,
I'm not saying that, but my point is that when he
Yeah.
goes to try to sell, he's going to say, "Well, this is how much I paid for it,"
Yeah.
because he's unaware that he overpaid, but he's unaware of how much he overpaid. Right.
Yeah. And,
So
we all find out when we go to sell it 1 year, 5 years, 10 years. So
yeah.
like you say, stick with the house until things pull around. Don't move too soon.
All right. So that's number one, is unaware. Number two, problem aware.
Okay.
Now, pay attention to this. Days on market start to creep into the mix at this point. Or if it's a hot market and days on market are low, then the offers are not what the seller is expecting. So problem aware. So they put the house for sale. They're unaware at first, and they're like, "My house is the most beautiful house in the neighborhood. If they got 200,000, I'm going to get 250. Or if they got 400,000, I'm going to get 450.
Mm-hmm.
Mine has a swimming pool. How many times have you heard this? Mine has a 3-car garage, and theirs only has a 1-car garage.
Yeah.
Mine is on the cul-de-sac. Mine is this. Mine is that." And they have these excuses of why they're asking more money.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And you have to determine, will the lender, aka the bank, will the lender consider those plausible, tangible increases?
Yep.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
So what happens is the buyer, as we call bringing it to the market, the buyer will actually educate you.
Yeah.
And this is where problem aware comes in, right? So now it's either one of two things happens. Either the house sits on the market and the realtor starts with this, well, we got to lower it by $10,000 because people shop in $10,000 increments. Like if they're looking for a house for 200,000 and they put in your house is 205,000 or 210,000, they're not going to see your house because they put in up to 200,000.
Yeah.
And they're going to mix your house for 205, which is a bunch of crap. Used to be correct back in the day, but not anymore, right? Or the realtor is going to tell you got to do, $10,000 worth of work. Well, you should probably replace the kitchen. Huh?
Mhm.
You
Paint
know?
this, paint that.
Now realize if you go back and listen to our podcast, which I'm not going to get involved in, but NAR, the National Association of Realtors Association, National Association of Realtors,
Mhm.
was sued and won on October 31st, 2023 for racketeering for keeping the prices of houses up too high. $1.78 billion they're sued for.
Yeah, and they lost.
And
The
they
other guys
lost.
won.
250,000 people in Louisiana class action sued them, and they lost. That's just one state. The rest are coming, I promise. It'll be a flood, right? My point is this, that this is how they keep the market up, because they get paid on what? What they sell for. So the higher they can sell for, the more commission they get.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so the seller starts to sense there's a problem, but doesn't know what the solution is. And they are like in this type of research step.
Hmm.
They know there's a problem. They know they got to do about it. They got to do something about it, right? So this is the seller when you're talking to them with a lot of questions, but not very committal,
Hmm.
or will not feel they understand it all, and they'll have to wait. They'll have to think about it, right? They think there is more to know, and another shoe is going to drop on them, and they're going to get ripped off, or they
Hmm.
feel like they're going to get a short deal, or they're going to miss something, and they don't want to do that.
So you're talking about in your example, like somebody who's selling a house and it's not moving, then he's wondering why. But that could be somebody who hasn't even put it on the market yet. We might catch somebody, and they would it still work in that scenario, like for rent by owner, and we're saying, hey, you want to sell, and he hasn't put on the market yet. Will he hit that stage in some way of hitting problems?
Every seller goes through these stages. They start off with unaware,
Hmm.
and then they have a problem awareness. They have a problem.
Hmm.
The other, it could go the other way. I get too many phone calls. I don't know who to pick.
Oh,
Too many people make appointments with me and don't show up.
yeah.
I mean, there are more than just I can't sell it. The point. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to say that. It's more than just I have a problem. It's a problem that I can't sell it because,
Hmm.
and they're trying to figure out how to solve that problem.
Hmm.
Is this making sense?
Hmm.
Good. Let's move on to number 3. Number 3 is solution aware. Here, you'll find your cash seller. All cash, no terms.
Hmm. My way, the highway.
Yeah, they feel they know what they want, but are not exactly sure who can give it to them. So they're hunting for that person,
Hmm.
which is why they're talking to you.
Yeah, yeah.
They know they have a problem, but by now, they know they have a problem by now and started to get answers, right?
Hmm.
Including what you need to fix for them to do a deal.
If you can solve, if you're the solution.
You ever notice that some sellers, when you talk to them, they know exactly what they want and some don't?
Oh, yeah,
Is
sure.
this, is this clarifying for you why? It's where they are in this awareness scale.
Yeah.
It's like unknown, right? They have a problem, right?
Hmm.
And then they're aware of the problem. Now they're being aware of the solutions or hunting for the solutions because they started looking for solutions. So now they're starting to get choices,
Hmm.
right? So this is where You find their problems and help them to start to solve them. And I'm not talking about what you can do for them, right? Because here's what happens. Unfortunately, I have found that the seller practically still knows nothing about their choices or potential ways to sell.
Hmm.
So let me
Yeah.
ask you a question. Let me ask you a question, Peter.
Hmm.
If you wanted to learn creative real estate, what would you type into Google?
Well, I would type creative real estate financing.
Good. So how many answers would you get?
Too many. I'm afraid another screen will show up with websites of questions to look for it. On and on and on.
Let me see here. So what did you say? Creative?
Creative real estate financing. Because I think we once in a while we mention that it's really the financing that we're working on. But it's just kind of long to say that, but it's really how are you going to finance it?
Okay, so I typed that in, and
Yeah.
there are 26,200,000 results.
Oh boy.
So how is this different than what the seller's going through with
Right.
their solutions,
Yep.
right?
Well, I think part of the problem is anybody that they talk to would give them their solution
Right,
or from their perspective, not
right.
some all pervasive, oh, here's all your choices, pick one. So he knows, like, that's not the whole story. I wonder where else I can find the story. Like, look up anything. You go, like, is that really it? Or we have to look for more answers? How do you know when you have the whole story? You don't.
So I'll tell you what happens.
Mm.
They start going after commonalities,
Mm-hmm.
and the most common thing is money. So just give me all my cash, take the house, and walk away.
Yeah,
When a person says to me they want all cash, that tells me they are the most ignorant seller on the market. They have
absolutely.
no idea what they're giving up, and they haven't spent the time to learn. And their awareness is this awareness. They think they're in solution aware, and they're not. Because
Mm.
unfortunately, I have found the seller practically still knows nothing about their choices.
Mm. Bill, I talked to a guy the other day, swear to God. I think the house was something like, say it was $600,000. He wanted to walk away with 570,000.
Yep.
He expected like the closing costs and everything to be like 3 or 4%, and it's like okie dokie, It was all on text. He wouldn't even like talk. That's
Right.
how dumb this. So it was like it's exactly what you're saying. Just give me cash, and he expected to get so much of it, and he was so wrong. He was so far off. It was unbelievable.
However, this is true, Peter. However, the silver lining is at this stage, they're looking for ways to sort things out. And once they start sorting things out with your help, they're getting warmer and start to trust you.
Hmm.
So, this is where I thrive because, and you know this because you've been with me too long in houses and coaching clients and events, and you've been in all scenarios with me,
Mm-hmm.
right? I tell people, even if you're not going to sell me the house, give me a call and let me help you.
Hmm.
This is what they call consultative type selling,
Hmm.
right? Where you're going to help the seller with your potential ability, even if it's just because you're listening to this podcast and you've learned something, to help the seller remove the roadblocks, even if you don't buy the property. And my number one response to all this is, which isn't a response, it's just what I tell people, is that karma makes me the most amount of deals.
Hmm.
If I help enough people, what it does for me is it gets me my education because I get to see what the seller does. which, by the way, one of the most fascinating products I have ever released was what I called being the reluctant buyer.
Hmm.
And it was also the biggest failure I had because people don't understand or didn't understand what that was. Because, see, if you don't go study your seller and completely understand and be familiar with your seller, it's like standing in the middle of a cornfield looking for a cup of water. It's just not the right place to get a cup of water. You have to study your seller. You have to understand your seller because your seller's emotional desires with the correct math will get you a deal. So how are you going to know what the emotional desires are until you start studying the emotional desires? So getting in a house and looking at a house is the best thing you could do, even if you and don't try to buy it. Don't even try to buy it. Just go in and just do the. And I think I did a great job, but obviously I sucked at it because people didn't buy it. I had a checklist that's in the house that you use. You put on a clipboard and you actually go through the house and you look at the house. There's a checklist on all the, like all the utilities and like it's like literally a 10-minute walkthrough. And then I give you all the questions. So when you sit down at the couch or in the kitchen with the people, what you ask them, and then when we get all done, the last thing is, well, let me check with my partners or I'll do whatever, and I'll get back to you with an offer.
Yep.
It didn't even do any of that. It was just to get used to being in the house, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, I want you to notice up to this point, because we need to move on. You need to notice up to this point, right? We haven't given the offer yet.
Now, I see what you mean by too soon. That's way too soon.
And if we did, it would be very premature and not at an acceptance level for the seller yet.
You know, it's crazy. That makes so much sense. Like, when we're doing some texting and checking with people, hey, is your house for sale? You want to sell? You want to talk to me about it? I'll give you an offer. They go, how much?
Right.
Just how much? Like, you look at it, you're like, what the hell am I supposed to say? Dumbass. What do you mean, well, how much? We haven't even
Because they think
spoken.
they're in a solution where and they're not.
Exactly. So it's like, wow, you just can't get to these guys.
This is the reason why we came up with the basic formula some years ago, Peter. Like, number one, contact and communicate to a motivated seller.
Yeah.
Number two, tell them what you do. Number three, ask what is needed and wanted. And number four, give it to them. Right. And when I say give it to them, it's like my deal is you pick any price you want as long as I get to pick the terms.
So this guy who just responds, how much, and doesn't want to talk, he theoretically might just get his money. In today's market, somebody might come along, give him his money, he goes off and stays in ignorance bliss. If not, in 2, 3, 4 months, he's going to be like,
he'll be in problem aware.
Yeah, he'll come up. So he might come around later on. Oh, that's good to know. That makes me feel a little better. Oh,
so we want to look for people that are in solution aware already.
Yeah.
Right. So that comes to number 4, brings us to result aware. Now is the time to start telling the seller what you can do for them. Not give them the offer. At this point, you're just showcasing the salient or major points or benefits of your different types of deals to the seller. It's all you've heard me say, like, imagine this, or what if I could do that, or what if you could get this, right?
Yeah.
And I pose to them the situation, right? It's what I often call taking their temperature on what their actual acceptance level could be, or is not.
Before talking the money at all, just solving the problem.
Now, you know what I mean? Solving the problem. It's like, what if I told you I can get you $600,000 for your $400,000 house? Well, how are you going to do that? Right? Okay. Well, here's how it works. Right?
But it's going to depend on the problem. Like if the guy says, how I'm
What
tired
if
of
I
renting.
what if I could what if I could tell you I could take your mortgage payment over tomorrow and catch up your past payments? Would you do that? Subject
Yeah,
to.
things like that. Yeah.
What if I could keep paying you monthly and you don't have the landlord obligations? So you still get cash from the property, but you don't have the landlord obligations. That's
Right.
owner finance,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
What if I could get you if what if I could get the buyer to pay your closing costs and you don't have to come out of pocket for money at
Mm.
the closing and still get cash flow and make like $200,000 on the property. So you're going from negative paying $30,000 to pay. That's the Grand Slam offer,
Yeah.
right? Those are all the litmus tests that I do, right? This is where I throw out my hypothetics, right? Hypothetical examples and see how they respond.
Mm.
I'm not narrowing it into one or two offers or in pitch mode. This is what happens is people go into pitch mode. You shouldn't be in pitch mode.
Mm.
Because remember, what is an offer? An offer is the correct math with the emotional desire of the seller to get you a deal. We're not in that offer mode yet,
Okay.
right? You don't want to be in pitch mode. I'm just building my value and seeing if it is what is needed and wanted. Because how many people tell you, I'm just going to go to my realtor? No,
Yeah.
I don't want to do that. I'm just going to go to my realtor.
Yeah.
You haven't built value.
Mm.
Lastly, this is where I'll touch upon what the seller gets, the timeline, and how the seller can walk away from his situation. Realize at this point, they only have a desire, which is a strong wish for what you can do or not do. Right? So this is the trigger. This is the tripwire now that will get you from 4 to 5. So right now they're just desiring, they're wishing they can get it. They're not doing anything about it. They're just wishing for it.
Yeah. They're looking at the bait, but they're not biting.
Right? You don't want to give them the offer until they have showed some interest. And
Mm.
interest means they've become involved, especially with their actions and their questions. So you were talking about that earlier with salesmen, right? They don't start giving their pitch until it's time, right?
Yeah.
So once they have shown some interest or start going into the details of the transaction, trying to learn how it will go and how it will turn out for them, you don't move on. You're not ready for the offer.
Mm-hmm.
Number 5. I just realized we're at 57 minutes, so we got to move along here. Number 5, most aware. Am I making sense so far?
Yeah. So to get to 5, are you finding that thing in 4 that the guy most like, oh, that would really help me, or like, oh, that sounds good. How would we do that? Like you finding the thing that he
So
resonates with.
here's the magic.
Yeah.
Well, unbeknownst to me,
Hmm.
I did not plan this. This is by accident.
Huh.
My solopreneur script does this for you if you just stick to the script, which is why I'm so strong about you need to follow the script.
Hmm.
Like you don't follow the script, you're not doing this.
Hmm.
Right? Number 5. And it's not just you. A lot of people feel like once they get the script, they go on and they get the points, but the script follows this awareness
Oh,
scale. Okay.
okay, good.
Number 5, most aware. At this point, the seller has determined you are a great solution for them or for their transaction. And they now want to know the deal or the actual numbers and semantics of how it will all play out. In other words, you've pre-qualified for them. How many people say, I'm so glad I talked to you. I didn't know all of that.
Even when they don't buy, it's been very enlightening because some of these steps, even if you don't do it perfectly well, are happening. They're getting help.
Now pay attention to this, Peter, because I wish we had another hour because I could spend another hour talking about this. But now listen to this.
Tune in next week, ladies and gentlemen.
No, I'm not going to do this. So this is where your pitch to kind of push them off the fence starts. Now, what I mean by pitch, here's what I'm talking about. I don't mean twisting somebody's arm or holding a gun to their head. The used car salesman, like this is the car you should buy, not the one you came in for, because the car that he's trying to sell you is his biggest bonus.
Yeah.
He's worried about him, not you. I'm not
Mhm.
talking about that. Here's how you pitch someone. You use bonuses. Use bonuses of dealing with you
Ah,
or dealing with me. And I'm going to just rattle these off. I'm not going to cover them, which I could in a whole episode, but I'm not going to. So you ready?
mhm.
I've
Yeah.
got 10 of them. I've got 10 of them.
Oh, go.
Number one, no closing cost. I get the buyer to pay it.
Hmm.
And this is for you, Peter, because you were asking me the other day, I'm the $3 million guy. Like, what if I want to be able to have in my back pocket the down payment, because you were looking for benefits to tell him to close him.
Yeah. Yeah. If I lose him, how do I reel him back in? Yeah.
Right. Number one, no closing cost. Buyer pays them.
Hmm.
Number two, we do the deal on the date of their choice. So there's predict.
Hmm.
Number three, there's no cleanup for the seller. How many houses have we been in and the house has got crap all over, and I tell them, take what you want, leave the rest, we'll get rid of it.
Yep.
And for somebody that's in a probate deal, or somebody that's been in a house for 30 years and a spouse dies, this could be huge. It's the deal clincher for them, because the realtors tell them to clean it up and make it pretty.
That's right.
Right? Number four, no repairs for the seller. We'll do the repairs.
Mhm.
Just walk away. Right? Number five, no buyers tramping through the house. Now, number five should really be number one, because there are a lot of people that have busy lives. They've got families and kids and parents and jujitsu lessons and soccer games and meetings to be at, and they don't want to spend the time every day to clean their house in case the realtor calls and somebody wants to walk through the house. Right? They don't want to spend that half an hour every day cleaning the house. Right?
Right. It's every day.
Yeah.
Wow.
Number six, out of pocket money if they owe too much.
Mm.
Right? Number seven, relying on an agent to make future plans. It's uncertainty. Like, how do you know when you can hire the mover? How do you know when you can start your new rent or buy your new house?
Yeah.
You have uncertainty. You can't rely on the agent giving you even if they tell you we're supposed to close on the 30th, 38% of the time that closing doesn't happen with an agent.
Hmm.
Number eight, getting bank approvals for the buyer. How many times have we bought houses? How many times have I bought houses because the day before the closing, something changed with the seller? They re-asked to resubmit pay stubs, and the pay stubs changed because they didn't work overtime the last month. Or whatever. Somebody loses a job, or the interest rates went up and they no longer qualify. And the day before the closing, they find out, oops, we don't have our loan anymore. We got to start over.
Yuck.
Right?
Yeah.
Number nine, becoming an unwanted landlord. That means they can't sell the house because either it's too much money or they owe too much money or whatever. And they decide to rent it so they don't have to make the payments. And all they're worried about is the payments, never thinking about the landlord obligations. Now they got somebody in there saying the toilet's not fixed and the lawn's not cut and yada yada yada, and they're trying to live their lives, and they're aggravated with this house. Number 10, buyer inspections and repairs. Right? So even though the house is pretty and they think that it doesn't need any work, there's going to be code violations. There's going to be something that the inspector's charging $400 or $500. He's going to justify his fee by finding things are wrong, and he's going to spook the buyer. And now you're going to have to bribe the buyer by either doing repairs that don't need to be done or give money at the closing. So those are just 10 benefits off the top of my head that we give the seller. Okay.
Yep.
So you should rewind this tape and write those down, because those are things you should say on the phone. All right. This is the part of the conversation where you will hear the most about objections. So we're 1 hour, 4 minutes over. We're pretty much done with the podcast. I'm going to cover for about another 5 more minutes, something a little bit extra. I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to get to this, but I'm just going to do it just because I'm going to use this video for my Creative REI Reply users so they can learn from it.
Okay.
Okay. So if you want to stick around, that's fine. If you're not, go ahead. Thank you for being with us. I appreciate it. Make sure you like us and make sure you subscribe and make sure you do all the things we talked about in the beginning of the podcast. So the bonus here is this is the part of the conversation where you will hear most of the objections, stalls, or concerns about why the seller won't pick you. Right? But I promise, once you've spoken to about a dozen to 20 sellers, that's all it takes, 12 to 20 sellers, you will soon realize whether you buy or not, you're going to soon, whether you buy the property or not, you are going to soon realize that these objections, stalls, or concerns are pretty much common with most sellers. Which means if you learn them, you'll know how to respond to them. So here's what you should also realize. There are only about 12 to 15 of them for any industry, especially ours. I'm talking about the objection, stalls, resistance, questions, any of that stuff.
Yeah.
So once you start to collect them, in other words, every time you hear an objection that you can't answer or don't have a good answer for or didn't turn the seller around from, like I want all cash, that's an objection.
Yeah.
And if you didn't turn them around and you lost control of the conversation, you should write that down. They want all cash, and you should practice or research or talk to somebody like us and get a good answer for that objection, and you should write it down, and it should be in front of you, and you should make your own little playbook. So when you hear that again, you can use that answer to turn them around or keep the conversation moving, right? So there's only 10 to 12 of them. You should collect them, and you will bring them up before the seller does, which is what you guys tell me all the time, that I'm good on the phones or I'm good in front of the people. The reason why is because I bring up these objections, stalls, and resistance before they do. So your conversation with each seller, or in sales speak, your presentation, because we're not really doing a presentation, but if you were doing a presentation, should cover each of these awareness characteristics as well as the common objections. So your sales pitch, which like I said is our script, your sales script should be covering, going through these awareness characteristics we just spoke of, right? Mm-hmm. Which is unknown, right? You remember what they are?
Unknown.
Yeah.
Problem. Did I miss one? Unknown, problem, solution. No, I missed one.
Yeah.
Does unknown, problem, solution, pitch. There's one after.
It's unaware, problem aware, solution aware, result aware, most aware.
Okay.
Okay. So your presentation should go through that, as well as bring up the objections you commonly hear. Right. And then when you get all done, it should leave you at step 5, all about the math, having covered the seller's emotional desires with the first 4 stages of this awareness scale I covered with you today. So the emotional desires are conceived, like Napoleon Hill said, you can see it, whatever you can conceive and believe, you'll be able to achieve. So by bringing their awareness up, they'll conceive what they can get. They will also believe what they can get.
So you're doing it for them.
You raise their awareness.
It's interesting. So we always think about doing that from our perspective, that we can see and believe buying a house, but you have to get the other guy to conceive it, believe it, and then he sees like, oh yeah, I'll sell you my house. Oh geez. Right.
It's the
so you want the guy to go through that.
Yeah. Now for a little bonus, once you use this little 5-step process, It builds good rapport and awareness. And there is nothing like building good, solid trust to last a lifetime. And here's how. This is how you build trust. Make your actions match your words. In other words, do everything you promised in this transaction. Then deliver exchange in abundance by doing little extra things along the way in the transaction. For example, I got 5 examples and then we're going to end off, right? The little extra things you would do along the way in the transaction, right, that you didn't promise them in the close, are things like bundling all the documents orderly, like in a nice order, and delivering them to the seller once the deal's all done so they have it all in one package. They have it all in one place and they can put it with their papers. Right? If you're doing it physically, you give them physical. If you're doing it electronically, you put it all in one PDF document so they have it and they can save it on their computer and they know where it is. Right? That's delivering exchange in abundance.
Mm.
Number 2, any extra legwork, like tax documents or talking to the mortgage company or condo docs or zoning stuff or anything that comes up, you don't rely on the seller to do it. If you can do it for them and do the legwork, then you do it.
Mm.
Right? Number 3, keeping the seller informed with every step you do by texting them on your progress. Now, you learned this valuable lesson. We don't have time for you to tell your story, but you learned this valuable lesson because you had an eviction you were doing and everything was on text. Your son showed you how to print the text. You gave it to the judge and you won. So you want to make sure you keep everything you're doing with the seller once you do a deal in writing, either by email or by text.
That's right.
You can communicate, but make sure you summarize your calls so everything's in writing. So if something goes bad later on, you can print them all and you have all the history. Excuse me, a history of what's going on.
Yep.
Or what happened. Number 4, handle the filings. Like handle all the filings with the town hall, with the insurance companies, with the utilities, etc. So that the seller has very little to do. And number 5, only inform the seller on what they need to know. So when you're like giving them updates, you don't need to tell them, oh, well, I went to the town hall and the city clerk couldn't find the paperwork and it took me 4 days to do it. You don't need to tell them that. What you need to tell them is you could say after several days, I finally got the blah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you want to tell them how much you work. But those are just simple ones that you can do. But the point is that when you start doing deals, this is important because you'll get referrals. And that's very important.
Mm.
Okay, so I covered a lot. We're an hour and 13 minutes. I'm sorry I went over. Hopefully you got something out of this. If you have any questions, you can send us a support ticket at flippinghousesforrookies.com. Please make sure you subscribe to us. Make sure you like us. Make sure you leave a comment. Thank you for all of your support. And check it out. Give us a support ticket. Let us know you tried it on your phone calls. And make sure that you let us know that it worked. Okay? So off we go, Peter, on to podcast number 394, which is next week for us. And again, we record this on Thursday mornings, 9:30 Eastern Standard Time. If you want to be part of that and ask questions, you can go to YouTube, Facebook, or LinkedIn. Okay? Over and out. Have a good week. Flourish and prosper. Thank you.